let's return to the big story of the day. So many elements of this. It's the migrant crisis. Let's talk to Conservative MP Jonathan Gullis. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Fingers crossed. After 3 weeks of inactivity of the Barge down in Portland in Dorset being empty, the first 50 migrants board that vessel today. It's important we cross that threshold that has proved so difficult. You know, this boat, this barge, has worked all over the world for about half a century. It was commissioned in Barbados in 1976. It's held homeless people, it's held migrants, asylum seekers, construction workers, never once had a fire. Suddenly, it gets to Portland and we're told it's a floating Grenfell. So I don't believe those delays. I think it was a last-ditch bid to stop the government's plan, but it looks as if it will get up and running at long last today. Hallelujah.
Well, absolutely, as you say, Kevin, it is a relief to finally see what the government has invested in the BB Stockholm is coming into use. Of course, I also get people will rightly say, well, it's up to 500 people max it can hold, and we've sadly seen some numbers already where that is what comes over in a day. So ultimately, we're going to not just need more barges and so maybe those 2 cruise ships that we desperately wanted to see land on shore, come along shore, but sadly haven't yet done that. And obviously the authorisation of some of these RAF bases yet sadly delayed again, probably till October. So it is good news. As you say, the BB Stockholm was used in Rotterdam to house asylum seekers, was used in Hamburg to help homeless people, and was used in the Shetland Islands to house construction workers. So it's perfectly safe, perfectly fine. And the FBU were clearly just trying to play party politics on behalf of their mates in the Labour Party. But sadly for them, they failed. The good news to the British public is finally we're seeing some of these alternative solutions used. But of course, as I say, if we don't stop the boats, if we don't stop seeing people arrive in the hundreds, if not thousands each week that we sadly might see over the summer, then of course trust will continue to evaporate in the British public about taking back control of our borders.
Absolutely. You mentioned our friends in the Labour Party. Stephen Kinnock, one of the shadow ministers, revealed yesterday that, guess what? If horror of horrors, Labour win the next election, they will continue with the Tories' policy of putting migrants into barges, into disused RAF camps, renovated prisons, derelict prisons, etc., etc., etc. So after calling your party every name under the sun, racists, you know, evil, don't care about human rights, quietly, they suddenly mention, we'll carry on with the same policy. That is hypocrisy on an epic level, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They voted against using these type of alternative accommodations in the House of Commons multiple times. Stephen Kinnock, it's amazing, to be fair, his ego fits on the airwaves, because he certainly believes he's the most important person in existence. And actually what shocks me with what Stephen said at the weekend is that he's basically laying the groundwork for ultimately when we do get a flight off to Rwanda, the Labour Party will then probably come out and say, oh, we would keep the Rwanda policy in place and try and play somehow that they're just going to carry on what this evil Tory government, in their words, is doing, yet hoping that they'll somehow fool people in the Red Wall in like Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and Talk into believing they're going to be tough on borders. I don't believe for a single second that they'll carry on doing what it is they want to do. One of their own Labour councillors in Newcastle upon Tyne was found out to be helping illegal migrants make bogus, probably human rights claims in order to remain here. We know they've got backbenches full of people who want to return to the European Union. Stephen actually was one of the biggest, loudest advocates for having a second referendum and for remaining in the European Union. So let's not kid ourselves here. This party might want to dress itself up for the Daily Telegraph as if it's somehow going to be tough on borders. The reality is the people running the show simply want to process people quicker, which doesn't stop the boats. And when we're accepting 7 in 10 applications, Labour is effectively calling for an amnesty, which will only encourage smugglers to try and send more people across the English Channel, because they'll say you've got a 70% chance of succeeding in staying permanently.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Now, what do you make of the Ascension Island plan? It's being called Plan B, front page of the Times today. It seems to indicate that the government, fearing that Rwanda may never come off, have come up with an alternative, and that's this remote British outpost in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where there's 800 people live there, all military. I mean, what do you make of it? I mean, is it a goer?
Oh, look, I think I'm glad that the Home Secretary is looking at a Plan B alternative. I think that's the right approach. We can't, as you say, solely just put all our cards into Rwanda. And actually, the Illegal Migration Act, Rwanda, and the Nationality and Borders Act, they're all parts of the puzzle that it ultimately needs in order to actually break the smugglers' operational model. But it's right that the Home Secretary look at the Ascension Islands. It's also right that we look at, and reportedly in conversations with 5 other African countries, to be able to have a Rwanda's type deal. I think this is exactly what we should be doing. And if Rwanda is got through the court successfully, I do think it will, personally. The Lord Chief Justice clearly saw the common sense in what we were trying to do. And, of course, the fact Rwanda hasn't got any returns agreements with any countries should surely satisfy our judicial system that, therefore, people going to Rwanda will remain there permanently and be looked after, as we see the UN themselves use Rwanda for tens of thousands of migrants who have refugees when it comes to trying to look after them and house them and secure their futures. So I do think that it's right. I think we need to have other deals like Rwanda with other safe third countries. So immediately after Rwanda is successful in the courts, we can sign these other deals and then get multiple planes off to those safe third countries, use the Ascension Islands if necessary for processing, but then we can clearly send a very firm signal that if you come here illegally, you will not be in a 5-star hotel. You will not be accessing the NHS. You will not be getting education for free whilst the British taxpayer subsidises it for you. You will be sent somewhere else because ultimately you came here illegally.
Absolutely.